On a crisp autumn morning, Willow Creek was as serene as ever. The leaves had turned fiery shades of orange and red, painting the streets in colors that hinted at the change in seasons. Birds chirped softly as the townspeople started their day, each following their well-worn routines. Jake Wilson, a high school teacher, walked down the quiet streets with a cup of coffee in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. To most of the town, Jake was just another resident, a quiet man who'd grown up here, gone off to college, and returned to teach. He wasn't particularly memorable to those who passed him daily. A bit of a loner, they thought, with a heart set on his work and little else. Jake had a subtle but comforting presence, though, and in Willow Creek, he was known as a patient and dedicated teacher, especially when it came to working with kids who needed extra support. Jake's passion was helping students often overlooked by others, and no one knew this better than Sam, a teenage boy with a talent few could truly see or understand. Sam was on the autism spectrum, a bright but withdrawn boy with a knack for seeing the world differently. Jake saw beyond the silence and shyness that others often mistook for disinterest. He noticed the way Sam's eyes lingered on details, intricacies that most would overlook. A smudge on a painting, a crack in a sidewalk, the exact shade of a falling leaf. To others, these things were trivial, but to Sam, they were as loud and vivid as a shout. Jake had always believed that Sam's art wasn't just a hobby, it was his language. But convincing others to see it that way was another story. It was a Saturday, and the town square was bustling with early risers preparing for the day's activities. There was talk of the annual art contest being held in just a few weeks, a contest that had, for years, showcased the best of the town's talent. Artists from around the area flocked to Willow Creek to display their work, hoping for a chance at the modest prize money and a coveted spot in the town's only gallery. It was an event filled with tradition, and this year there was an additional excitement. Marcus Lang, a young man with a bit of local fame, was returning from art school to compete. Marcus's father, a well-off businessman, had proudly sponsored the event, and the town was abuzz with the news of his return. As Jake walked through the square, he couldn't help but overhear the chatter. People talked about Marcus's inevitable win and the caliber of his work. There was an unspoken understanding that no one else stood a chance, and it was true. Marcus's work was impressive. Jake felt a pang of doubt as he thought of Sam. He had hoped, with a deep but quiet determination, that this might be the year Sam would enter. But against Marcus, Sam would have to be at his absolute best, and even then, there was no guarantee. Yet something in Jake wouldn't let the idea go. He made his way to Sam's house, thoughts tumbling as he planned his words. When he arrived, Sam was in the garage, sitting by an old weathered easel, sketching something intricate and beautiful. Jake watched him from a distance, admiring the precision and care Sam put into each stroke. He could see the focus in Sam's eyes, the way he was lost in the world he created. Jake stepped forward, hesitant but resolute. "Sam," he began, "have you ever thought about entering the art contest this year?" Sam looked up, his face a mixture of surprise and skepticism. The art contest was for real artists. At least, that's what he'd heard. He was used to being underestimated, often brushed aside by peers who didn't understand him or adults who thought he couldn't handle real challenges. But he'd never thought of himself as someone who could compete in a setting like that. He tried to explain this to Jake, his words stumbling, his gaze drifting down. "Look, Sam," Jake interrupted gently, "I know you may think this isn't your place, but I believe in you, and I think the world deserves to see your art. You have a talent that's different, and that's what makes it powerful." Sam's eyes flickered with something Jake had rarely seen, hope mixed with fear. He was silent, processing the idea. It was clear he wasn't fully convinced, but something in Jake's words had reached him. They agreed to meet at the school art room the following day, just to see what might happen, as Jake put it. The next morning, they met as planned. Jake was struck by the transformation he saw in Sam. With a quiet resolve, Sam began working, each brushstroke thoughtful and purposeful. Jake watched in awe as scenes from Willow Creek came to life on the canvas, but not in the way anyone else saw them. Sam painted each building, each street, each familiar face with a perspective that was uniquely his. He added details no one else would notice: the hidden corners of the town square, the faded sign above the bookstore, the exact way light reflected off the window of the diner at sunset. It was as if he were painting not just the town but its soul. Days turned into weeks, and with each session, Sam's artwork grew. Jake could feel the momentum building, but with it came a sense of dread. He knew that Sam's entry would not be easy for the town to accept, especially with Marcus in the competition. Still, he pushed forward, encouraging Sam with every session, reminding him that his art mattered, regardless of the outcome. Finally, the day of the contest arrived. Sam walked into the town hall with Jake by his side, carrying his painting wrapped in a plain cloth. As they approached the registration table, Jake noticed the curious glances, the whispers among the crowd. He could hear people muttering, some scoffing at the thought of Jake's kid trying to compete. Even Marcus, who stood confidently near his easel, gave a dismissive glance in their direction. Jake's chest tightened with a mix of anger and protectiveness, but he kept his focus on Sam, who appeared unfazed, his attention on his canvas. The competition began, and the hall was soon filled with a silence so profound that it seemed the very air was holding its breath. Marcus unveiled his work first, a stunning, technically flawless piece that left the crowd murmuring with admiration. But when it came time for Sam to reveal his painting, a hush fell over the room. Slowly, he pulled back the cloth, and gasps rippled through the crowd. What they saw was not just a painting. It was a story. Sam had captured the essence of Willow Creek in ways no one had ever seen. Each brushstroke held meaning. Each color told a story, and each detail seemed to hold a memory of the town's people and places. It was both familiar and surreal, as if someone had taken the town they knew and painted its spirit. The judges exchanged glances, visibly moved, and for the first time, Marcus's confident smile faltered. He looked from his own work to Sam's, realizing that what he had dismissed as child's play was something far beyond his expectations. When the winner was announced and Sam's name echoed through the hall, there was a stunned silence before a wave of applause erupted. Some cheered, others whispered, but in that moment, everyone was united in awe. Jake watched as Sam stood there, his face a mixture of shock and quiet pride. For the first time, he saw Sam being recognized not just as different, but as remarkable. Jake Wilson's quiet presence in Willow Creek had always made him easy to overlook. He wasn't flashy, he didn't boast, and he was happiest when he could simply blend into the background. Yet those who really knew him recognized that Jake's influence ran deeper than the typical teachers. He had a way of reaching students no one else could, especially the ones who struggled to fit into the typical mold. That was why, when Jake first noticed Sam sitting alone at the edge of the school playground, drawing in his sketchbook instead of joining the other kids, he didn't try to pull Sam into a game or ask him why he wasn't playing. Instead, Jake just sat down beside him, not saying a word, simply watching as Sam lost himself in his art. Sam was unlike the other students. He was perceptive, noticing small details others missed, though this gift often seemed more of a burden than a blessing. He struggled with the noise, the unpredictability of people, and the relentless expectations from teachers who didn't understand why he couldn't just focus. He lived in his own world, a world where colors and shapes had their own rhythm, where the world's chaos could be distilled into lines and brushstrokes. Over time, Jake saw that Sam's gift wasn't just remarkable, it was rare. Sam could capture the essence of things in a way that made them feel alive, even on paper. A stray cat, a crumbling wall, the distant shape of a cloud. They were all vivid and layered with a depth that even Jake struggled to put into words. And the more Jake saw of Sam's work, the more he became convinced that this boy wasn't just an artist. He was a storyteller with a brush. But in Willow Creek, Sam's talent had always gone unnoticed. The townsfolk, as kind as they were, didn't quite understand someone like him. They respected Jake for his dedication, but they didn't see the value in focusing so much attention on a troubled kid. As some whispered, "It's not like he's going to become some famous artist," they'd mutter. The teachers, though polite, didn't always have the patience to look beyond Sam's quirks, to recognize that his silence was not ignorance, but a different kind of awareness. It was hard for Jake to see the same people he knew to be compassionate and open-minded fail to see Sam's potential. The art contest was announced every year, a tradition dating back decades, and the event drew in visitors from nearby towns. It was a prestigious occasion, a chance for the artists of Willow Creek to showcase their best work and gain a little recognition. But the stakes had never been as high as this year, with Marcus Lang returning to town. Marcus was something of a local celebrity, a young man whose talent was widely admired. He had spent the last few years at art school and had already made a name for himself, winning awards and even being featured in a small art magazine. His family was well known, well liked, and very influential in Willow Creek, and with Marcus's return, there was an unspoken consensus: he would win. When Jake first broached the idea of the contest to Sam, he had done so cautiously. He knew how much Sam disliked attention, how he avoided the spotlight at all costs. The last thing he wanted was to push Sam into something that would overwhelm him. But there was a fire in Sam's art that Jake had never seen before. It was as if, for the first time, Sam was painting not just to escape the world, but to connect with it. Jake wanted to give Sam that chance, even if he had to shield him from the inevitable criticism that would come with it. It took days for Jake to convince Sam to even consider entering. Sam kept asking, "Why does it matter, Mr. Wilson? They won't like it. They'll just say it's strange." Jake struggled to find the right words, knowing that Sam wasn't entirely wrong. Willow Creek was a town that valued tradition and familiarity, and Sam's art was anything but conventional. But Jake reminded him, art isn't about making people comfortable. It's about making them see something they never noticed before. As the contest day grew closer, Sam threw himself into his work. Each brushstroke, each line, was a reflection of Willow Creek as he saw it. Complex, layered, filled with beauty and flaws. He captured not just the physical features of the town, but the feelings that lingered in each corner. The warmth of the diner, where the elderly gathered to gossip and drink coffee. The loneliness of the library, often empty but filled with silent stories. The quiet dignity of the cemetery, where memories rested undisturbed. Sam poured himself into this painting, spending late nights in his room, with only a dim lamp illuminating his work. He painted with a focus that astonished Jake, who had never seen anyone so completely consumed by a single task. The night before the contest, Jake found himself doubting. What if this was too much for Sam? What if he was setting him up for disappointment? The entire town would be there, and they would have their eyes set on Marcus. Jake knew that no matter how brilliant Sam's work was, it wouldn't be easy for the judges or the townsfolk to see past Marcus's reputation and the expectations they had placed on him. And deep down, Jake worried about how the town's reaction might affect Sam, who had finally begun to open up, to trust that his art was worth sharing. But there was no turning back now. On the day of the contest, as Sam and Jake walked into the town hall, Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He looked down at Sam, who seemed both nervous and oddly calm. Together, they made their way through the crowd, past the other artists who eyed them with a mix of curiosity and dismissal. When they arrived at the registration table, Jake felt the weight of every stare in the room, every hushed whisper that followed them. Marcus was already there, confidently setting up his display. He barely acknowledged Jake and Sam, brushing past them with the ease of someone who was certain of his victory. As the contest began, Sam waited silently for his turn, his eyes fixed on the floor. When Marcus's name was called, the room filled with admiration. His painting was stunning, technically perfect, a skillful portrayal of the town with all its charm. People gasped and murmured in approval, and Marcus beamed, his confidence filling the space. He was a talented artist, and no one doubted his work deserved praise. Finally, it was Sam's turn. As he unwrapped his painting, Jake noticed a tremor in his hands. He reached out, giving Sam a reassuring pat on the shoulder. With a quiet nod, Sam removed the cloth, and the room fell silent. His painting wasn't what anyone expected. It was a raw, unfiltered vision of Willow Creek, but not in the picturesque way they were used to seeing. He had painted the town as he saw it, not just the beautiful facades, but the cracks in the pavement, the fading paint on the walls, the subtle imperfections that most people overlooked. It was Willow Creek, not as it wanted to be seen, but as it truly was. The silence stretched, and for a moment, Jake feared the worst. He could see the confusion, the discomfort in people's eyes as they struggled to process what they were seeing. Then, slowly, a murmur began to spread through the room, a ripple of surprise and awe. People started to move closer, examining the details, the depth in every brushstroke, the way Sam had captured the essence of their town with such honesty and intimacy. By the time the judges announced Sam as the winner, the room was filled with applause, though not without a hint of shock. Jake saw Marcus, his face frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend how this quiet, unassuming boy had managed to capture something so profound. And as Sam stood there, accepting the applause with quiet dignity, Jake felt a surge of pride. In that moment, he knew that Sam hadn't just won a contest. He had shattered the town's expectations, proving that sometimes the greatest talent comes from the most unexpected places. Willow Creek would never look at Sam, or itself, the same way again. In the days following the contest, Willow Creek buzzed with an energy it hadn't felt in years. It was as if the entire town had been jolted awake by Sam's unexpected victory. People who had known each other for decades found themselves sharing glances of surprise, as if seeing one another in a new light. Conversations sparked everywhere, from the diner to the grocery store, centering around Sam's artwork and his talent. It wasn't just that Sam had won. It was how he'd won, by creating something so different from what people expected, something that seemed to capture the very heart of Willow Creek. Jake, meanwhile, was both elated and cautious. He knew that while many in the town had been moved by Sam's painting, others still had their reservations. Winning the contest had granted Sam a new level of attention, and Jake worried how this newfound visibility would affect him. Sam had never been one to seek the spotlight, and the town's fascination with his art was both a blessing and a potential burden. Still, Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he watched the town slowly come around, beginning to understand what he'd always known, that Sam's way of seeing the world was a gift. A few days after the contest, Jake was approached by the local gallery owner, Mrs. Lawson, a spree woman in her 70s with a sharp eye for talent. Mrs. Lawson had been one of the judges at the contest and had been particularly struck by Sam's work. She invited Jake and Sam to the gallery, hinting that she had a proposal in mind. Jake felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension as he arranged the visit with Sam, wondering what this could mean for the young artist. When they arrived at the gallery, Mrs. Lawson greeted them with a warm smile, her eyes twinkling with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just discovered something remarkable. She led them to a small, quiet room at the back of the gallery, where Sam's painting from the contest was already displayed, illuminated under soft lights. It looked even more powerful in this setting, with the details standing out in ways Jake hadn't noticed before. Mrs. Lawson turned to them, her voice filled with admiration. "Sam," she began, "your work it's extraordinary. I've seen artists come and go through this gallery, but I can't remember the last time I saw something so raw, so honest. I want to offer you an exhibition here, a showcase of your work. We'll put together a collection. Let the town see the world through your eyes." Sam looked at her, wide-eyed, his expression a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. An exhibition. The idea was almost too big to grasp. Jake could see the hesitation in his eyes, the doubts that lingered despite his recent success. But Mrs. Lawson wasn't finished. People in this town, she continued, they're used to seeing what they expect. But your art, Sam, it makes them see things differently. I think that's something Willow Creek needs, especially now. And who knows, maybe this is just the beginning for you. For a moment, Sam didn't respond. He looked down, fidgeting with the edge of his shirt, his mind clearly racing. Then, in a quiet voice, he looked up at Mrs. Lawson and said, "But what if they don't like it? What if they think it's strange?" Mrs. Lawson chuckled softly. "Let them think it's strange, Sam. Art isn't supposed to make people comfortable. It's supposed to make them think. And I think you've got a lot to say." Jake placed a reassuring hand on Sam's shoulder, his heart swelling with pride. "She's right, Sam. This is your chance. Don't let anyone tell you what your art should or shouldn't be." With a small, hesitant nod, Sam agreed to the exhibition. Over the next few weeks, he threw himself into his work, spending hours creating pieces that captured everything he'd felt but had never expressed. Jake watched as Sam's art grew even more powerful, his paintings becoming windows into a world that was both familiar and strange. Sam painted the sights and sounds of Willow Creek as he experienced them: the faded, peeling paint on the town's oldest buildings, the crooked bench at the bus stop, the way shadows fell across the sidewalks at dusk. Each piece told a story, and with every brushstroke, Sam was finding his voice. As the exhibition approached, excitement in the town grew, but not everyone was as enthusiastic. Marcus Lang, who had been the favorite to win the contest, seemed particularly bitter about the attention Sam was receiving. He had been the golden boy of Willow Creek, the one everyone expected to succeed. And now this quiet, withdrawn teenager had stolen his spotlight. Marcus's frustration was palpable, and it wasn't long before he began to voice his doubts openly. One afternoon, as Jake was leaving the grocery store, he overheard Marcus speaking with a group of townspeople. "I don't get what the big deal is," Marcus was saying, his voice laced with bitterness. "It's just scribbles, really. I mean, look at it. He doesn't even try to make it look normal. Art should be beautiful, not weird." Jake felt a surge of anger rise within him, but chose to keep his distance. He knew that Marcus's words were more about his own insecurities than anything else. Still, he worried that others might share Marcus's sentiments, that they might fail to see the beauty in Sam's unique perspective. The thought gnawed at him, and as he walked back to his car, he couldn't shake the feeling that this exhibition was going to be more of a challenge than he had anticipated. The night of the exhibition arrived, and the gallery was filled with townspeople, each curious to see Sam's work. Some had come out of genuine interest, others out of sheer curiosity. Marcus was there too, standing near the back with his arms crossed, a scowl darkening his expression. Jake could feel the tension in the air as people moved from painting to painting, their expressions shifting from confusion to awe as they took in the raw emotion in each piece. At first, the reactions were mixed. Some people didn't quite understand Sam's perspective, whispering to each other about the strange and unconventional nature of his work. Others, however, were visibly moved, their faces reflecting the impact of Sam's vision. Jake watched as an older couple stood in front of a painting of the town square, their eyes welling with tears as they recognized the scene, a spot where they had shared countless memories. To them, Sam's painting wasn't just a picture. It was a memory, captured with a depth they hadn't realized they needed to see. But then, just as the crowd was beginning to settle, Marcus stepped forward, his voice cutting through the quiet. "I don't understand," he said loudly, his tone mocking. "Is this really what people think art is now? I mean, come on. This isn't art. It's just a bunch of random colors and shapes. Anyone could do this." A hush fell over the room as all eyes turned to Marcus. Jake felt a surge of protectiveness rise within him, and he opened his mouth to respond. But before he could say anything, Sam stepped forward, his gaze steady as he faced Marcus. "It's how I see things," Sam said, his voice quiet but clear. "Maybe it doesn't look like what you're used to, but it's real to me. Art doesn't have to be pretty to mean something. It just has to be true." For a moment, Marcus was silent, taken aback by Sam's unexpected response. The townspeople watched, their expressions a mix of admiration and respect. Slowly, one by one, people began to clap, their applause filling the gallery. Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched Sam stand there, unflinching, his face calm yet resolute. In that moment, something shifted. The townspeople began to see Sam's art not as something strange or different, but as a powerful expression of a unique perspective. The whispers of doubt faded, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the boy who had dared to show them a different way of seeing their world. When the exhibition ended, Jake walked over to Sam, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it, Sam," he said, his voice filled with pride. "You showed them what you see. And I think they finally understand." Sam looked up at him, a small smile breaking through his usual stoic expression. "Maybe they do," he replied softly. As they left the gallery that night, Jake couldn't help but feel that something profound had happened, not just for Sam, but for the entire town of Willow Creek. Sam's art had opened a door, allowing people to see beauty in places they had once overlooked. And in doing so, he had transformed not only their view of the town, but of one another. The weeks following Sam's exhibition brought a whirlwind of change to Willow Creek. People who had once passed Sam without a second glance now stopped to greet him, offering compliments and well wishes that left him shyly nodding in gratitude. Local businesses even began to display prints of his paintings in their windows, a quiet but powerful tribute to his unique perspective. Yet, amid this newfound appreciation, there lingered an undercurrent of tension. Not everyone had accepted Sam's art with open arms, and in a town as tightly knit as Willow Creek, even small ripples of dissent could grow into waves. Marcus Lang was at the center of it all, his frustration simmering as he watched the community rally around Sam. For years, Marcus had been Willow Creek's golden boy, and he struggled with being cast into the shadow of someone he had once dismissed as unimportant. The resentment was subtle at first, manifesting as little more than a cold shoulder here or a dismissive comment there. But it wasn't long before Marcus's dissatisfaction began to spill into the open. One morning, as Jake was grabbing his usual coffee at the diner, he overheard Marcus talking to a small group of people. His voice carried a sharp, bitter edge as he spoke. "I just don't get it," Marcus said, shaking his head. "Since when did art become about who could paint the strangest picture? Look at it. Anyone could do what Sam does. The only reason he's getting all this attention is because people feel sorry for him. It's like they're rewarding him for being different, not for actually being good." Jake's jaw tightened as he listened, feeling the surge of anger at Marcus's words. He wanted to confront him, to defend Sam's talent, but he knew that fueling Marcus's bitterness wouldn't help. Instead, Jake took a deep breath, steadying himself, and continued with his coffee, determined not to let Marcus's resentment overshadow Sam's success. But the exchange weighed heavily on him, and he couldn't help but worry that Marcus's words might sway others, especially those who still saw Sam's work as different or strange. In the meantime, Sam was blissfully unaware of the growing tension, fully immersed in his art. Jake had noticed a newfound confidence in him, a spark that hadn't been there before. Sam began experimenting with new subjects, taking his art beyond the familiar streets of Willow Creek. One afternoon, he painted a sprawling, dreamlike landscape of the nearby mountains, capturing the jagged peaks and dense, shadowed forests with a haunting beauty. Another day, he created a portrait of his mother, her face illuminated by soft, golden light, every detail carefully rendered with the same gentle precision that had come to define his style. Each piece was a testament to his growth, a reflection of his evolving voice. But despite Sam's progress, the whispers of doubt grew louder. Marcus, feeling his influence wane, began to gather those who shared his sentiments, leading a subtle campaign against the acceptance of Sam's art. He convinced some locals that Sam's success was less about his talent and more about the town's pity, a notion that struck a nerve with those who had once seen themselves as Willow Creek's most esteemed artists. Soon, rumors began to circulate. "Didn't you hear? They're saying he only won because people felt sorry for him," or "it's just a phase. He'll disappear from the spotlight soon enough." Jake tried his best to shield Sam from the negativity, but he couldn't prevent all of it from reaching him. One day, as they worked together in the art room, Sam paused, his brush hovering over the canvas, and looked up at Jake, his expression troubled. "Mr. Wilson," he began hesitantly, Do you think they only like my paintings because they felt bad for me?" The question hung in the air, heavy and raw. Jake felt a pang of sadness as he looked at Sam, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes. He knelt down beside him, choosing his words carefully. "Sam, the people who say those things, they don't see what I see, and they don't understand what makes your work special. Art isn't about being normal or fitting into someone else's idea of what's right. Your art is honest, and that's what people connected with. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Sam nodded, but Jake could see that the question lingered, and as the days went on, the weight of the town's divided opinions began to take its toll. Sam's enthusiasm dulled, and he grew quieter, more withdrawn, as if he were retreating back into the shell he had once inhabited so comfortably. Jake watched this with a heavy heart, feeling helpless as he saw the spark in Sam's eyes begin to fade. He knew he had to do something before Sam's confidence was completely extinguished, but he wasn't sure what. Then, one evening, a surprise visitor knocked on Jake's door. It was Mrs. Lawson, the gallery owner who had organized Sam's exhibition. She looked weary but determined, her eyes alight with a sense of purpose. Without waiting for an invitation, she walked into Jake's living room, clutching a letter in her hand. "I've been thinking about this whole mess, Jake," she began, her voice firm. "About how people like Marcus are so quick to tear down what they don't understand. It's not just about Sam. It's about everyone who's ever felt different. Everyone who's ever been dismissed because they didn't fit into some neat little box." Jake listened, intrigued as she continued. Mrs. Lawson explained that she had been in contact with an art critic from a nearby city, a respected figure known for his appreciation of unconventional artists. She had sent in images of Sam's work, hoping that someone outside of Willow Creek might see the talent that some of the townspeople had overlooked. And to her delight, the critic had responded, expressing interest in meeting Sam and potentially featuring his work in a regional art show. Jake felt a swell of hope. This could be exactly what Sam needed, a chance to step beyond the small-mindedness of Willow Creek and prove his talent to a broader audience. With Mrs. Lawson's encouragement, he arranged a meeting with the critic, carefully explaining the opportunity to Sam, who listened quietly, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The following weekend, Jake and Sam made the trip to the city. The art show was being held in a grand, sprawling gallery, filled with works from artists across the region. As they walked through the halls, Sam's eyes widened, taking in the variety of styles, the bold colors, the innovative techniques. For the first time, he was surrounded by art that defied convention, by people who celebrated creativity in all its forms. And when the critic finally arrived, he greeted Sam with genuine warmth, his admiration for the boy's work clear in his gaze. "I can see something in your art that goes beyond skill," the critic told Sam, his voice filled with sincerity. "You have a way of capturing moments, of finding beauty in the ordinary. That's a gift, Sam. Not everyone has it." Sam listened, his face a mixture of wonder and disbelief. The critic's words were a balm to the wounds left by Willow Creek's doubts. A validation of the talent he had feared was nothing more than a fleeting illusion. By the end of the day, he had agreed to participate in the regional art show, a step that felt both thrilling and terrifying. When they returned to Willow Creek, The town was abuzz with news of Sam's latest achievement. Mrs. Lawson organized another gathering at her gallery, this time to celebrate Sam's upcoming appearance at the regional show. And while many people attended in genuine support, Marcus lingered at the edges, his bitterness all the more apparent. Unable to contain his frustration, he confronted Sam in the middle of the gathering, his voice carrying a harsh edge that silenced the room. "So now you think you're some big-shot artist, huh?" He sneered, his face twisted in resentment. "Don't kid yourself, Sam. This is just a phase. People will get bored of your little different paintings soon enough." A hush fell over the crowd as they watched the confrontation unfold. But to Jake's surprise, Sam didn't retreat. He looked at Marcus, his expression calm and steady, and replied, "Maybe it is just a phase, but at least I'm not hiding behind what everyone else thinks art should be." The room erupted in applause, people cheering for Sam's courage. Marcus stormed out, his face red with embarrassment, and Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched Sam stand there, a quiet but unmistakable confidence in his stance. In that moment, it was clear that Sam's journey had taken on a life of its own, extending far beyond the boundaries of Willow Creek. The regional art show was a resounding success. Sam's paintings were met with admiration and praise, and he returned to Willow Creek with a newfound sense of purpose. The town, too, was changed. People began to take pride in Sam's accomplishments, seeing him not just as an artist, but as a symbol of the town's resilience and spirit. And though there would always be those who doubted, Sam had found his voice, and he wasn't going to let anyone silence it again. In the weeks following the regional art show, Sam's life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. His work, once seen by only a few in the small town of Willow Creek, had now reached a wider audience, and the impact was unmistakable. Word of his unique talent spread quickly, and soon he was receiving letters from people he'd never met, artists, students, and even parents of children with autism, all expressing their admiration for his perspective and thanking him for daring to be different. Some people shared their own stories of feeling different or misunderstood, and in each message, Sam felt a connection to strangers who had found something of themselves in his art. Jake watched with quiet pride as Sam began to open the letters one by one, carefully reading each message, his face lighting up as he realized the impact he was having. Despite this newfound attention, Willow Creek remained divided. While many had come to appreciate Sam's work, there were still those who clung to the old ways, who felt uncomfortable with the attention an outsider perspective had brought to their town. At the center of this dissent was, of course, Marcus Lang. His bitterness hadn't faded since Sam's unexpected victory in the contest. If anything, it had only grown more intense. Marcus saw himself as Willow Creek's true artist, someone who embodied the town's values, and Sam's rise threatened his sense of identity. It was one thing to lose a contest. It was another to be overshadowed by someone he had dismissed as unworthy. This tension came to a head one evening in a town hall meeting, where local leaders had gathered to discuss plans for the annual fall festival. Traditionally, the festival was a modest affair, with stalls selling handmade crafts, local bands performing, and artists showcasing their work. But this year, Mrs. Lawson proposed something different. She suggested making Sam's art a central feature of the festival, with a special exhibition that would celebrate his success and bring more visitors to Willow Creek. The suggestion was met with mixed reactions. Some were excited, seeing it as an opportunity to draw attention to the town and perhaps boost the local economy. Others, however, were less enthusiastic, viewing the proposal as unnecessary and even exploitative. Marcus was quick to voice his dissent, his voice rising as he addressed the gathered crowd. "I don't understand why we're making such a fuss over one artist," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. "Willow Creek has always been about tradition. We've never needed outside attention to celebrate our community, so why start now? And let's be honest, this whole thing feels like a charity case. Are we really going to turn our festival into a showcase for someone just because he's different?" The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Jake clenched his fists, feeling a surge of anger rise within him. He was about to respond when, to his surprise, Sam stood up from his seat at the back of the room. He walked to the front, his movements slow but steady, and faced the crowd. For a moment, he looked around, his gaze lingering on each face, as if gathering his thoughts. "I didn't ask for any of this," Sam said, his voice quiet but unwavering. "I didn't ask to be different, and I didn't ask to be the center of attention. But my art, it's the only way I know how to speak. It's how I make sense of the world, and if people connect with it, then maybe it's because they see something familiar in it. This isn't about charity. It's about understanding each other, even if we don't all see things the same way." The room remained silent, his words hanging in the air. Sam's simple honesty seemed to cut through the tension, and Jake could see a shift in the expressions of those around them. People were listening, really listening, and for the first time, they were hearing Sam for who he was, not as an outsider or a different kid, but as a young man with something meaningful to say. Despite Sam's heartfelt words, Marcus wasn't ready to let go. He narrowed his eyes, his voice cold as he replied, "Well, that's easy for you to say when everyone's bending over backward to make you feel special. But some of us have been working our whole lives to build something here, without needing sympathy to get noticed." Jake felt a pang of frustration, but once again, Sam spoke up, surprising everyone. Maybe art isn't about being noticed," Sam said slowly, his gaze steady. "Maybe it's about noticing the things that other people miss. Willow Creek is full of beautiful things. I just paint what I see, even if it's not what everyone else sees." With that, Sam stepped back, and the room fell into an uneasy silence. Mrs. Lawson, clearly moved by Sam's words, took the opportunity to speak. She reminded everyone that art had the power to bring people together, to help them see beyond their own perspectives. "This festival," she said, "isn't just about celebrating one artist. It's about celebrating all the things that make Willow Creek unique, and that includes every voice, every viewpoint. If we can't do that, then what kind of community are we?" The meeting ended without a clear decision, but the seeds of change had been planted. Over the following days, people began to discuss the idea of the festival differently. Some were inspired by Sam's words, realizing that his art wasn't about demanding attention, but about offering a new perspective on the town they all loved. Others were still resistant, but the tide was slowly turning, and by the time the festival approached, it was clear that Sam's art would be a central feature. The festival day dawned bright and clear, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the town square. Sam's paintings had been displayed in a special pavilion, and as people wandered through, they found themselves captivated by the familiar scenes he had rendered in such a strikingly different way. There were paintings of the old mill, its once crumbling exterior now transformed into a thing of quiet dignity. The diner where the townsfolk gathered was portrayed not just as a building, but as a place filled with warmth, laughter, and life. Each painting seemed to hold a story, and people lingered, studying the details, seeing their town through Sam's eyes. Marcus was there too, watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. As he observed the crowd, he noticed how people reacted to Sam's work, how their faces softened, how they whispered to each other in awe. For the first time, he seemed to realize that Sam's success wasn't just a passing fad or the result of sympathy. Sam had given the town something it hadn't known it needed, a chance to see itself anew. Toward the end of the day, Marcus approached Jake, who was standing near Sam's display, watching over his student with a proud smile. Marcus's face was taut, his posture stiff, but there was a hint of vulnerability in his eyes as he spoke. "I still don't get it, Marcus admitted, his voice low. "But I guess maybe it's not for me to get. Maybe he really does see things we don't." Jake nodded, sensing the struggle within Marcus. "Art isn't always about understanding, Marcus. Sometimes it's just about feeling something, even if you can't explain it. And Sam, he's given this town a chance to feel, to remember what makes this place special. Marcus fell silent, his gaze drifting to Sam, who was quietly talking to a small group of visitors, his face lighting up as he described one of his paintings. For the first time, Marcus seemed to let go of his resentment, replaced by something close to acceptance. With a brief nod, he turned and walked away, leaving Jake with a renewed sense of hope. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the town square, Sam's pavilion remained filled with people. Jake watched from a distance, marveling at how far Sam had come, how he had managed to change not only his own life, but the lives of those around him. Willow Creek had been a town set in its ways, a place where change was slow and tradition ruled. But Sam's art had cracked open the barriers, allowing people to see beyond their own perspectives, to embrace the beauty of difference. By the end of the evening, as the festival drew to a close, Jake and Sam stood side by side, looking out at the empty pavilion where Sam's art had been displayed. Sam's face was filled with a quiet contentment, a peace that Jake hadn't seen before. He had found his place in the world, not by conforming but by staying true to himself. And in doing so, he had given the town a gift that went beyond art, a reminder that beauty can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest strength lies in simply being who you are. As they walked back through the quiet streets, Jake placed a hand on Sam's shoulder, feeling the deep sense of pride and gratitude. Sam had taught him, and the entire town, a lesson that couldn't be measured by any contest or exhibition. He had reminded them that every voice matters, that every perspective has value, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer the world is to let it see us for who we truly are. In the months following the festival, Willow Creek settled into a new rhythm, but something had shifted. The town, once resistant to change, now carried a quiet openness that hadn't existed before. Sam's exhibition had left a lasting impression on the community, and his art continued to be a topic of conversation in coffee shops, at family dinners, and even in the classrooms where students once dismissed him as the quiet kid who painted strange things. Now, Sam was a quiet sort of hero to many, his perspective a reminder that there was beauty beyond what met the eye. Jake watched all of this unfold with a profound sense of pride, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Sam's journey was only beginning. Though the festival had been a triumph, he knew that true change took time, and that there were still people who viewed Sam's success as a fluke, a passing phase that would eventually fade. Jake sensed that if Sam were to truly thrive, he would need to step beyond the borders of Willow Creek. The regional art show had been a great start, but there was a wider world of art out there, and Jake felt certain that Sam could make his mark far beyond their small town. One evening, as they worked together in the school art room, Jake decided to broach the idea with Sam. He watched as Sam moved his brush across the canvas, lost in his own world, creating yet another vivid scene that seemed to breathe with life. The boy had grown more confident in his abilities, but Jake could see that he still harbored doubts, that lingering fear of not truly belonging. Gently, Jake cleared his throat. "Sam," he began, "have you ever thought about what it would be like to show your art somewhere? Bigger, like maybe even in the city?" Sam looked up, his eyes widening. He set down his brush, clearly taken aback. "The city," he echoed, as if the concept itself was almost too big to fathom. Willow Creek was all he had ever known. The idea of stepping out into a world filled with strangers, each with their own expectations and judgments, was daunting. But he was intrigued, and Jake could see a glimmer of excitement mingling with the hesitation in his gaze. Jake continued, his voice calm but encouraging. "I think you've outgrown this place, Sam, not in a bad way, but in the best way possible. You've done something incredible here, and the people of Willow Creek have been lucky to see your talent. But there's a whole world out there that deserves to see what you can do. You don't have to decide now, but just think about it." Over the next few weeks, Sam did just that. The thought of leaving Willow Creek, of stepping into a world he'd only ever glimpsed on television or in books, was both thrilling and terrifying. He was torn between the comfort of the familiar and the allure of the unknown. One evening, as he walked through the quiet streets, he found himself stopping in front of the diner, his gaze lingering on the warm glow of the lights inside. This place, this town, had been his whole world, and it would always be home. But he couldn't shake the feeling that Jake was right, that there was something more waiting for him beyond these streets. The decision finally came one night when Sam was at home, flipping through the letters he had received from people who had seen his work. One letter in particular caught his eye, a message from a gallery owner in the city who had attended the regional art show. She had been deeply moved by his work and had extended an invitation to visit her gallery, offering to arrange an exhibition if he were interested. The words seemed to leap off the page, filling him with a nervous energy he couldn't ignore. It was an opportunity that only came once, and as he read the letter again, he knew he couldn't pass it up. When he told Jake of his decision, the older man's face lit up with pride. They spent the next few weeks preparing, arranging the details of his trip, and planning which pieces he would bring. It was a bittersweet time, filled with excitement but also a touch of sadness. Jake knew that Sam's departure marked the end of a chapter, not only for Sam but for himself as well. He had watched this boy grow from a quiet, uncertain teenager into an artist with a voice strong enough to move people. Now, he had to let him go. The day Sam left for the city, a small group of townsfolk gathered at the bus station to see him off. Mrs. Lawson was there, along with many of Sam's classmates, even those who had once doubted him. Marcus stood in the background, his expression unreadable, but as Sam passed him, he gave a slight nod, a silent acknowledgement that, despite their differences, he respected what Sam had achieved. Jake hugged Sam tightly, his voice thick with emotion as he said, "Go show them what Willow Creek is made of. And remember, no matter where you go, you'll always have a home here." The city was a world apart from Willow Creek. The towering buildings, the constant hum of traffic, the sheer volume of people, it was overwhelming at first, but Sam found a strange comfort in the anonymity. For the first time, he was free from the weight of being different. In the city, he was just another face in the crowd, a young artist with a vision to share. The gallery owner, Ms. D'Angelo, welcomed him warmly, introducing him to a vibrant community of artists who, like Sam, saw the world in unconventional ways. They became his mentors, his friends, guiding him as he navigated the complexities of the art world. Sam's first city exhibition was a quiet affair, held in a small but respected gallery known for its focus on emerging artists. Ms. D'Angelo had selected pieces that captured the essence of Willow Creek, showcasing the town's unique character through Sam's eyes. As people wandered through the exhibit, Sam observed them from a distance, his heart pounding as he watched strangers react to his work. Some were moved, others contemplative, and a few even struck up conversations with him, sharing how his art had reminded them of places and memories from their own lives. The exhibition was a success, drawing praise from critics and fellow artists alike. Sam's work was described as refreshing, honest, and deeply human, and offers began pouring in from other galleries and art festivals. He was, at last, beginning to make a name for himself. Yet despite the acclaim, he remained grounded, his thoughts often drifting back to Willow Creek, to the people who had believed in him from the start. Over the following months, Sam traveled to different cities, showcasing his work and growing as an artist. Each new place brought fresh inspiration, and he began experimenting with new styles, blending his unique perspective with the influences he encountered along the way. But no matter how far he went or how successful he became, his heart remained rooted in Willow Creek. Every canvas he painted, every story he told through his art, was a tribute to the town that had shaped him. Then, one day, Sam received an invitation that felt like fate. Willow Creek was planning a new community center, and the town council wanted him to create a mural, a piece that would capture the spirit of the town and remind people of the importance of embracing each other's differences. The project was meant to honor the diversity and resilience of Willow Creek, and they wanted Sam, their native son, to bring it to life. Returning to Willow Creek felt like coming full circle. The town had changed in subtle ways, shaped in part by the legacy of his art. People greeted him with warmth and pride, and he saw faces he recognized in the crowd, each one a reminder of his journey. As he worked on the mural, painting scenes of the town's familiar landmarks alongside images of the people who made Willow Creek what it was, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. This mural was not just a piece of art. It was a testament to the strength that comes from embracing one's true self. When the mural was finally unveiled, the townspeople gathered to celebrate. Jake stood beside him, beaming with pride as he looked up at the completed work. The mural depicted Willow Creek as Sam had always seen it, a place filled with beauty, resilience, and connection. The old mill, the diner, the town square, all were rendered in vivid colors, capturing the essence of a community that had learned to open its heart to new perspectives. As the crowd applauded, Sam felt a sense of peace he had never known before. He realized that he didn't have to choose between the city and Willow Creek, between being an outsider and belonging. His art was a bridge, connecting him to people from all walks of life, from every corner of the world. And in that moment, he understood that his journey had only just begun. As he stood there, surrounded by friends, mentors, and the people who had shaped him, he knew that he would carry Willow Creek with him wherever he went. His art was not just about seeing the world differently. It was about helping others see it too. And with that, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead, confident in his place in the world, knowing that he had finally come home to himself.